Okay, number 2. On number 2, when we take a look at number 2, the first thing I notice is there are 2 terms. And there are different variables. Now, because there are different variables, I am not going to just pick the highest degree. So this is that exception to the rule at the top. So it says when there are different variables, well, let's go back. If there are 2 terms and we want to name this by term, 2 terms is called a binomial. 2 terms, binomial. Now, when I want to name this by degree and there are multiple variables, what you have to do is take the degrees of all the variables in the term. The x has a degree of 4, the y has a degree of 1. Don't forget about that. So that makes that term the 5th degree. You're going to look at the second term. The x has a degree of 1. The y has a degree of 2. That's a degree of 3. Once you know what they are individually, you pick the highest. And the highest is a 5, so we will say 5th degree. So take a minute, look at these 2 and see how they're different. The first one only has 1 variable, so you pick the highest degree. The second one has multiple variables, so you find the highest degree of each individual term by adding the powers together. So we have 2 more here before we change things up. So on number 3, I'm just going to talk you through this. First, we're going to take a look. This has 3 terms. This has different variables. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, if it has 3 terms, and you had to name this by term, this would be called a trinomial. 3 terms, trinomial. Next, because it has different variables, you have to add up the degrees of each term individually. So on this term, negative 9x cubed yz to the 4th, I'm going to add a 3, I'm adding a 1, and I'm adding a 4. Now remember, I'm adding a 1 because this y really has a 1 there. So this is 8. When I go to the next term, there's a 2, there's a 4, this is 6. And the last term, remember when there's a variable by itself, is just a 1. Now at this point, you do not add those together. You just pick the highest degree, and the highest degree here is the 8th degree. Multiple variables, you have to do that. So there's one last example here before we change up pace. Number 4 has 1 term. Number 4 has different variables. If it only has 1 term, this is called a monomial. And remember, when there are different variables, you have to add all the powers, degrees, individually. 3 and 3. So this would be the 6th degree. And that's how we classify polynomials by term and degree. So we're going to switch gear for these last ones and change it up one last time. There's adding and subtracting polynomials. This year we have already learned what like terms and unlike terms are. So just to refresh your memory, like terms, they have to have the same variable and they have to have the same power. So take a look. 8x, negative 12x. Those are called like terms. Negative 4x squared, negative 7x squared. Those are called like terms. Numbers by themselves, 10 and 13. They're like terms. And the last set on the left, negative 5p to the third g and p to the third g, they're like terms. On the right, I have unlike terms. The first set are unlike terms because they both don't have an x. I'm not going to write things for all these, but just look. The second set, the powers are different. X squared, x cubed. The last one, this has x squared, y squared, and this just has y to the third. And there's a last example. Hopefully you know the difference between like and unlike terms. So it says here, you can only add or subtract, here's this word again, coefficients of like terms. So our last note sheet is adding and subtracting. But before we do, don't forget, x plus x is 1x plus 1x, that's 2x. But when you're multiplying, you add power, so that is x squared. These are two different examples that we're going to encounter in this chapter. So it says, remember to follow the same process when adding and subtracting polynomials as when you would simplify linear expressions. Distribute if necessary, combine like terms, and write your answer in standard form. Standard form means highest exponent to the lowest. Number 1 has 5x cubed, 2x, 1, negative 3x cubed plus 6. 5x cubed, negative 3x cubed, those are the highest degree. I have to combine those first. 5 minus 3 is 2x cubed. There is no other like term with 2x, but that must come next because it has a variable, x cubed, then x. Last, we have numbers by ourselves, 1 plus 6, that is 7. Go ahead and try number 2. I'll give you about 30 seconds. So when I take a look at number 2, even if you're not done, negative 3x to the 5th, negative 5x to the 5th, those have the highest degree. That would be negative 8x to the 5th. Next term would have to be this x to the 4th, and that's plus 2x to the 4th. Last, I see an x and a minus x, and x minus x, those are opposites, so they're gone. There's number 2. The only difference from 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, so we're only going to do one of these, is they put them in a group. What do I mean by put them in a group? This is in a group, so this is a trinomial. And then they have plus a trinomial. When it is addition, you don't have to change anything. So you just add up like terms. 2x squared, 7x squared, 9x squared. 10x, 6x, plus 16x. 4 minus 2, plus 2. So we're going to skip number 4. But here's where you have to pay attention, 5 and 6. So on number 5, this is a trinomial. However, this is what's important here. On this one, there is a minus sign. And if you don't pay attention to that minus sign, you'll mess up. So this is a trinomial minus a binomial, which means you have to distribute a negative here. So what I like to do is I like to change this to plus, and I change these to the opposite. Negative 2x to the 4th, negative 6x. Once I distribute and I change that, here's my math problem. This trinomial plus this binomial. So when I add like terms, 6x to the fourth minus 2x to the fourth is 4x to the fourth. 8x minus 6x is 2x minus 2. So I'll do this last one over here with you again. Notice, this is minus. When it's minus, I change this to plus, and I'm going to change each sign in here to the opposite. So it changes to negative x, minus 2x cubed, plus 4. When I change it, this one doesn't count, and I'm adding these together. Now remember, you don't change it all the time, only when there's a minus in front of the group. So, add like terms. Negative 2x cubed is going to come first, because it's by itself, and 3 is the highest degree. Plus 3x squared, minus 10x plus 4. I'm going to throw a wrench in here. If I had to name this by term, and it has 4 terms, think to yourself, what would I call this? This would be called a polynomial. If I had to name this by degree, what degree would I call this? Well, there's only one variable, and the highest degree is a 3, so this would be called cubic. The last two for our lesson today is find the perimeter. Perimeter means add up all the sides. So on the triangle on the left, we see all 3 sides. 9b, 12b, 12b. 12 plus 12 is 24. 24 and 9 is 33. 33b. There's a minus 8. There's a plus 8. That's 0. And there's one more minus 8, so this is 33b minus 8. And can you think of why some of you might mess up number 8? A rectangle has 4 sides. So don't forget, even though they don't have it written, the opposite sides are congruent. So you have to add those in. So if we find the perimeter, we're adding 2, 4, 2, and 4. That's 12x. 8 and 3 is 11. 8 and 3 is 11. So it's plus 22. I said that wrong. 22. And that is your lesson on classifying, adding, and subtracting polynomials. Keep your notes out while you work on your homework today.